Hi, I'm Josh Ross.
And this is Rick Renson, recording from the Century 21 Advantage Gold Studios.
Season 1, Episode 1 of Becoming the GOAT Happy Hour.
In this episode, we'll be talking to Chris, the nurse.
Chris, the nurse.
He's on the front line of COVID right now, working at a hospital.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. And he also decided late in life, in his mid-30s, to start this career. This is what makes him our GOAT.
Our GOAT?
Yeah.
Right.
Mid-30s, 2 kids. Full-time job, put himself through school, and started
he had a full-time job and school?
Yeah, and school.
All right, well, let's not give too much away.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's not give too much away. But let's get to my favorite part of the podcast, which is the happy hour part, folks. And our guest chooses Crystal Head Vodka, created by Dan Aykroyd and artist John Alexander. Crystal Head Vodka was created in 2008. Crystal Head is 80 proof and does not use any additives in the production of their vodka. This vodka is certified kosher and as well gluten-free.
Sounds delicious.
It does sound delicious. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's bring Chris in with his vodka.
What's going on, Chris? How you doing today, brother?
Nice
Chris
to be
the
here
nurse. How you doing? And you brought us Crystal Head Vodka.
Why vodka?
I'm going to be honest. I'm not a big liquor drinker, but
Okay.
A handful of times I've had this in particular drink. It's very smooth and is easy for me to handle. So.
Yeah, I'm not a vodka drinker either, so I'm praying that it's smooth and easy to handle.
Oh, you punks. Either am I, but I can get through it. Get through anything.
I remember the first time I saw the bottle. It was actually around 2008. My wife and I, we were on a cruise, and you can buy all kinds of alcoholic beverages and, a bunch of stuff tax-free because you're on the water.
Nice.
So I saw the bottle. It was pretty cheap, but most of the liquors were cheap. And I thought the bottle was really cool, and I was like, is this just like a really cheap vodka with a cool bottle? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, this
and
is
then
awesome looking,
when we got back to the States, I finally saw it, roll out in stores and stuff, and it wasn't cheap, and I missed my opportunity to buy it on a cheaper price.
Did you know at that point it was like Dan Aykroyd vodka?
I had no idea about any of it except the bottle was really, really cool. So it pulled me in. And then eventually, later, I'm not sure how long later, but I tried it and was like, oh, wow, this is a very smooth, easy drink. So
Nice.
it's
Well,
definitely
let us try it. Let us get ours.
I ain't afraid of no vodka.
All right, gentlemen, here we go.
Thank you, sir.
I'm actually a little afraid of them.
There you go. You nervous? Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
Right, everybody, let's
All right.
cheers it up and
Let's
give
get
it
it going, fellas. Nice. Let's see what this is about.
Let's smell for. All right, guys, going in.
Yeah, I don't. I can't smell. No, I'm kidding.
It is good.
It's
smooth.
Yeah, right. There's no harshness to it.
Yeah, I usually have like a gag
Speak for
reflex
yourself.
Now, I will say, too, a couple times drinking this
I'm just not used to
beverage,
vodka.
I kind of went a little overboard and drank a good amount of it and was pretty intoxicated, and I didn't wake up with a hangover. So
That's the best part.
I
about,
know
like,
that's
better
something
liquor.
that Dan Aykroyd has said in interviews
That it doesn't
with the
give you
no
hangovers?
additives and stuff.
Yeah,
that-
I believe it
that
has no sugar
hangovers
also,
are
I believe.
Yeah, that's what
the hangovers really don't really exist.
I'm going all in though. No hangover.
Now it just became his water. But yo,
It's not bad. We
did
probably
you-
should have had some ice. Probably
Yeah.
go better with a little ice.
No, I'm a neat guy.
Neat. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you usually drink it?
So I usually like it over some ice and with like a squeeze of lemon or lime in it. But this
Jazz
is-
it up. He does.
Oh, you don't even mix it. You don't mix it with anything.
So usually the first drink I do, I'll mix it. Maybe we'll do like some kind of martini or something. Real manly like. And then
Pinkies up, folks.
and then after the first one, I then usually get lazy.
Then I
and
man
mix
up.
some my own drinks and then just pour it over some ice with some lemon or lime.
Nice.
Yeah. That's,
Here's a little fun fact that you might not have known about the vodka, but when they were going to release it, they were doing it. It was like right around the same time that movie, the Indiana Jones movie, what is it? The King of the Crystal Skull? Was it?
yeah, I think it's called the Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, Kingdom of the Crystal. Yeah, whatever that movie was, folks. But when they were both kind of launched at the same time, and when he did, Dan Aykroyd didn't want to tread on the movie's toes or whatever, so he got in contact with Steven Spielberg.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Look at that. I wish I could just call Steven Spielberg up whenever I want. Like, hey, buddy, I got a problem.
Yeah, hey, Steve, can I rip you off?
Let me
That type
let me
thing.
jump in on this adventure with you.
And when like you just said, being ripped off, that's what he was, he didn't want to do that or look like he was trying to
Right.
make it off his movie or something like that. So he contacted him. And then the genius Steven Spielberg was like, hey, how about you make that the signature drink of the release of the movie?
Oh, cool.
And so at the premiere, after the, to have the after party or whatever, we serve Crystal Head, right? Yeah.
Crystal Head.
Yeah,
I call it
always
Crystal
Skull every time I look at it. I'm
It's
like,
that bottle. It
Yeah,
just gets
it's
stuck in
skull.
your head
Yeah,
and
it's
it
just gets you.
flows.
but that's pretty cool. And like, what a goat of Steven Spielberg to be like, yo, bring it. I open you with open arms. He could have been like, hell no, I don't want that here.
Nah,
I mean, it'd be
definitely
silly
would've
on
been
his
like,
part.
no, you jumped on my thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
See you in court.
So that's a goat. Let's cheers that goat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a sipper. I'm a drinker, sir. No, I'm kidding.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of cheers and drinking on this. This is pretty cool.
Can I see the bottle?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Let me see the bottle.
And here she is, folks.
Oh, yeah. Spooky. And isn't there like a mythology with crystal
Yeah,
skulls?
with the crystal
or
skulls,
something?
Yeah, there's like something throughout time. I remember I heard Dan Aykroyd on a Howard Stern show talking about it and the bottle and how it was designed,
Right.
and all that stuff.
The idea behind
it's
it
a
and all.
pretty cool story behind there, I guess, if you're into them sorts of things. I know Dan Aykroyd's like a extraterrestrial and ghost believer
Yeah,
and stuff.
absolutely.
Like, I don't want to put.
Who are you gonna call?
I don't. Right, exactly. I don't want to put things in his mouth,
You
like
think that's
your
right,
ideas in his mouth.
You think that's how he came up with the Ghostbusters thing? Was it because he was into the supernatural stuff?
Yeah, I think him
You
and
would
his
assume,
father,
right?
his
Yeah, I
family
mean,
was
if you're
into
gonna
it, I believe.
write a movie on something, it's usually things that you're into and hopefully like have a lot of interest and knowledge about. So
Absolutely.
I
man.
often get mistaken for Dan Aykroyd.
He's our Dan Aykroyd.
I don't want to say that's why I chose this drink, but it definitely helped.
I've sold some autographs.
There you go.
And you, so you, this is not your first time drinking it. Is this your go-to?
Yeah, again, like I said, I'm not really a big alcoholic drinker. Like
Right.
for the most part, usually
Right.
it's just maybe a handful of beers if I were to go out just socially or something.
right.
But for liquor, for sure, it's definitely an easy. If wherever I'm at, the bar has it, I'll order it. Or if I'm at home with my wife and we're gonna have a couple drinks, it's definitely a go-to for me.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
And a big part of that is because I've yet to be hungover from it, and
That's everything, folks.
I get hungover.
Take it from a nurse.
So when we rate this, we're going to rate it on 1 to 10 goats, and then we'll take the average. But I feel like you're just going to be pretty high because this is your thing.
Right. Well, and when you say rating it, we're just rating like all their vodkas or just any kind of liquor in general?
No, vodka.
Vodka.
Thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just against vodkas. Whatever we rate, it's against that particular liquor because there's, I prefer a beer.
Right.
This will get a 1.
Right.
I prefer whiskey, folks, like a man. Sorry.
All right. So Chris, you want to kick it off? What's your rating? 1 to 10 goats. How many goats you giving it?
So again, not being a huge drinker of liquor, especially, I've had my fair share of different vodkas and stuff, but for me, it's by far the best vodka I've ever had,
It is
and
super
I'd have
smooth.
to give an 8 or 9 to it easy.
Oh, okay. You want to go 8.5 or you want to go 8 or 9?
We'll do 8.5 as a professional rater.
Okay.
Wow.
8.5.
I'm going to give it a clean 8 because I'm that guy.
You're going to give it a clean 8?
I ain't going to give it no extras. No, I'm kidding. 8.
I'm gonna do one more test.
Oh, let's see. Let's watch his face. If he... That's a smooth liquor face. Good job, buddy. It's not like my face.
I'm going to give it a high rating too because the most vodkas I have tasted are like harsh. They have that harsh aftertaste, and then
Like a
hearing
hairspray.
that like there's no hangovers. I mean, that's in my head too. I think I'm going to go 8. I'm going to go with it, Josh, on an 8.
Nice.
Okay. So let's take that average.
We
I should have
are
did a
the
better
same.
number to make the better averages. So
So it's an 8, guys.
let's
Nice.
8 and 8.5. We'll call it an 8.25.
Oh, wow.
Someone likes it a little more.
I like this arithmetic. This is
Yeah,
great.
Let's just call it an 8.25. Do we all agree on 8.25?
Do we have calculators, folks?
All right. So Crystal
good.
Skull Vodka, 8.25 rating today, right now here.
Crystal Head
Cheers.
Vodka.
Sounds good. Cheers to 8.25.
8.25.
To Crystal Head.
Hopefully, if Dan Aykroyd ever hears this, he understands I'm trying to do it respectfully.
Yeah. I'm here. I'm listening.
Nice.
All right, Chris. So we want to get into your interview, but before that, we want to take a little commercial break. All right? When we get
good.
back, we're going to get into your whole story.
Sounds great.
Yes, sir. Right after these. Sponsor. Hey, this is the part of the show we're going to let you in on a little secret about my co-host, Rick Renson.
If you are looking for a relentless real estate agent from Century 21 Advantage Gold, give me a call at 215-806-6766. And that's 215-806-6766. You can also email me at rick.renson@c Century21AG.com.
Century 21! And we're back.
We're back to Josh pouring another glass as usual.
Hey,
He's ahead of
whoa.
everybody.
Oh, yeah, I'm on camera. They saw it. Never mind. Yep,
Can't lie.
caught me.
All right, Chris.
Let's get into this.
All right. So, what made you want to change careers?
Yeah, you had a full-time job,
What age
right?
was it? What age was it that you decided?
I was somewhere in my mid-30s. I don't remember the exact age. I remember the exact age of my oldest daughter. She was 2. It was actually on her 2nd birthday when I really kind of decided, like, hey, this was the fastest 2 years of my life.
Right.
I blinked and my daughter was 2. It just went by so fast. So I just thought to myself, like, that could have been an associate's degree already.
Right.
Like, and it went so fast that I don't know. And then having my daughter, and at the time my wife was actually pregnant with our 2nd child, I just thought, you know, I wanted to do better and be better. Like, I was at a job where, you know, I felt comfortable and I was working and everything was going well there, but I felt like I reached the ceiling at that job that I was at. Like,
Did you feel like you were making decent money? Were you
financially,
Was the pay
financially wasn't financially. The motivation wasn't financial for me.
Right.
It was more that I just felt like there was no more room to grow, and I felt like my days were becoming very repetitive. There wasn't much more for me to learn at the job that I was at. I was there for a long time, almost 18, 19 years. It was literally one of my first jobs out of high school. So it really just... I grew as much as I could grow there, and I just felt like it was becoming monotonous.
Did you
almost.
learn a lot from that job? Like, as far
I
as
definitely
joining the workforce?
I definitely did. The field that I was in was primarily women, so I was working with
The ladies.
yeah, for sure. But the majority of the employees, my coworkers, were female, so that I felt like kind of gave me some skill into then my next adventure, which was then nursing and going to school for that.
Do you find that nursing is like majority female?
For sure.
Yeah.
I know when I first went to nursing school, I think the statistic was around like 13 or 14% of nurses at that point were male.
Right.
The number was steadily growing, but slowly.
What was your graduating class, if you don't mind me asking?
Male to female, it
Yeah.
was. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 males in my entire graduating class of about 60 students. So,
If you're single, you gotta
lady
love
driven.
them odds. But, yeah.
but my wife was at home with 2 children,
Right.
you know, being so supportive and allowing me to go chase this dream. So,
Okay.
Nice.
So she like you still worked the full-time job, and then she stayed with her job, and
She sure did. And, you know, obviously, like I said earlier, I had a 2-year-old when I decided to go back. So it was a lot of prereqs in the beginning, community college at first.
Okay.
And then after I, you know, knocked out some of the prereqs, I was able to start to applying to some nursing schools.
Right.
And it's funny because honestly, the idea of nursing for me it was even a lot further back. So when I was younger, my mom was really sick.
Okay.
And then, you know, she started to recover, but throughout her whole recovery, we had nurses and doctors in and out of our lives throughout that whole entire process.
So you've seen how that kind of...
For sure. So that
thing
was like
works and
while she
everything.
was in the hospital, when she was home, there was home nurses coming out. So they almost became a part of our family and a part of our everyday routine.
Like taking care of your mom. And
Helping-
it was like, wow.
Correct.
Look at this wonderful work these
So
people
that
do.
kind of sparked my interest at first. And then as my mom was recovering, she was actually in a physical therapy rehabilitation center learning how to walk again. And then it was my turn, and I was sick. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I was 13, just turning 14 at the time. But again, it was my turn to be in the hospital and kind of...
well, to
See
clear
how
up,
nerds-
type 1 is that's the type where your pancreas doesn't produce. I'm
Correct.
blaming-
Yeah. So type 1 diabetics, it used to be called juvenile diabetes because a lot of the times the diagnosis came when people were younger, you know, preteen to teenage years. That's not so much the case now, but that is correct. My pancreas just doesn't produce insulin at all. It's an autoimmune deficiency, and you know.
So you have
Sorry to hear that.
You have needles, and you have to. Deal
So
with this
actually
every day.
now, luckily for me, I wear an insulin pump, and it makes it managing diabetes a lot easier now. But for a long time, that was the
So what's that,
regimen
do that
of-
for you? Or
Yeah. So
how's it work?
So it's a little bit of a process and a little bit of a learning curve, but you eventually learn what your body's basal rate is. So your pump kind of gives you a set little dose of insulin
And
all
this-
throughout the day.
This helped
Okay.
you. I mean, this made you feel comfortable with the whole getting to know the nursing thing, right? Because
for sure,
yeah,
and like I said, I was just around that community even a little bit more, and it just sparked my interest. I was almost forced when it was my turn, when I was sick, and I was a type 1, like I said early on, diagnosed diabetic. It just sparked my interest in the medical community. Just
got that fire lit.
Now,
got the fire lit.
Now, give us your first steps. Once you had this idea and you're like, I'm changing my career, I'm bettering myself. What were your first steps? And we do this for the listener so they can have like kind of a roadmap.
So I'm going to be honest. When I first graduated high school around, I'm going to show my age for sure now, but 2000, 2002, I actually went to the nursing program I ended up later at. I went there. I learned about their program. I talked to one of the counselors. They were actually still located at their old facility. And I went down there. I asked questions. I learned what prereqs I would need. And I actually started to dabble a little bit in taking classes at that point. But I still wasn't mature, and I had enough. I made too many excuses why, whether it was I was scared and felt like I was going to fail, or it wasn't the right time.
And this is back in 2000?
Yeah. This is the early 2000s. I was 18, 19 years old, just kind of learning who I was and figuring out what I was. Right. Okay. Exactly. But being a type 1 diabetic, full-time employment was really important because I needed medical insurance to be able to,
take care of your
for sure. So diabetes. I kind of fell into that job that I was speaking about earlier.
Because you needed the insurance to survive.
Exactly. So then, like I said, I kind of like maxed out everything I could possibly learn at that place. And, I'm forever grateful for that company because I feel like, it helped develop me into the person that I am today and teaching me how to work hand in hand with other people and things like that. But so like I was saying earlier, my daughter, it was her second birthday, and I just felt like my days were becoming very repetitive, and I just had to drive to now, and the courage, I think, because of my daughter and being a
new father, right?
I felt like I can't fail. I'm not doing it for me anymore. So it just gave me the motivation to at least just try. So I remember approaching my wife and saying, hey, I think I want to go back to school and become a nurse.
How did she respond to that?
We had a 2-year-old, and she was about 6 months pregnant at the time, so she was a little bit nervous and a little bit apprehensive. Exactly. This is when you decide you want to go back and do this. So, but again, she's extremely supportive and has been, my biggest cheerleader out of anybody. So it's been awesome. But I explained to her what it was. I said, hey, look, this is something that I always felt like I wanted to do. I made a million excuses on why it wasn't the right time.
Right.
I feel motivated because of our children and our life that we have now. I feel like, the monotony of every day at my other job, it was just time. I said, and there's a huge statistic. I don't remember it now because we're talking, 6-7 years ago we were talking about this. But the chances of children going to college and furthering their education is greatly raised when their parents have college educations as well.
Okay. All right.
So
say that again, because that's a motivator
right there.
It sure is. And again, it's kind of like you even see it in Hollywood. You see, actors and then their children become actors. It's because it becomes normal. It's normal. If my parents went to college, then I should go to college. Or it doesn't seem
goat drive.
Right. It doesn't seem unattainable. And I think a lot of things for me, I felt were unobtainable, and the fear of me thinking they were unobtainable was enough to keep me paralyzed and not moving forward. So having children was kind of, like I said, that motivating factor to kind of get over that fear for myself, and then was able to start pursuing it. So like I said, I enrolled into community college, started taking some required courses that you would need for pretty much any nursing program. Okay. And with nursing, it's kind of strange. There's like a handful of different avenues you can kind of go down to become a nurse.
Like specialize, kind of?
Well, not even just specialize. So even just to become an RN, there's you can get an associate's degree through a community college and be able to sit and qualify for your boards and become an RN that way. Okay. There's diploma-based programs, which are kind of, at this point, being, they're kind of going away because they're trying to further the nursing education career and make it more of a professional profession.
So what would be your advice to somebody who's thinking about becoming a nurse now? What's the best avenue to go down? Would it be one of them programs or?
So for me, I feel like clinically, I went to a diploma program that had a bridge program with the university. So I got my degree through Penn State, my bachelor's degree through Penn State. Okay. But while I got all of my clinical and hands-on nursing skills through this diploma hospital-based program. And I was able to get a lot of clinical time. And clinical time to me is so important.
That's
because,
like the hands-on.
You can read a book and, people can comprehend what they're reading and then they can whatever. But then when you get out, humans aren't books. We're not always going to be the same.
Same,
I
yeah,
might
right.
have a cold. You might have a cold. Your body's response to that cold is going to be completely different than mine. And it could be the same cold. I mean, there will be similar traits in that, of course, but everything's going to be a little bit different. So the clinical aspect of school for me was, to me, the most important, because then you could see how different people react to certain things. And then just that interaction with the human being is way more, to me.
Is that why you like it? Do you
than-
like it because of the interaction with that human being, or was it just like a strictly like financial kind of thing? Or
So again, like I said, financially, it wasn't that, and
wasn't
it's
the
funny because I
motivation.
remember one of the first things in nursing school. One of my instructors saying, like, if you're in this for the money, you're not going to last, because it's definitely a very special experience being a nurse. And one of the great things about becoming a nurse, though, is you can literally be as hands-on with patients as you want and be a bedside nurse and throughout any hospital or outpatient facility, however you decide to become, interactive with your patients. Or you could take that degree and go work for, an insurance company or, some other thing, and never have patient interaction ever. So
Oh, really?
it's definitely a degree that really opens up a lot of possibilities. So again, that's something else that I was like, okay, good. For me, bedside is where I like to be, especially now as a newer nurse still. I mean, I'm only about 2.5 years into my career now.
Right.
So to anyone who has been nursing or throughout the nurse community, they know that that's a very novice nurse still.
Right.
I'm learning every single day, and one of the reasons I love my job so much is every day is so different. Every day is an opportunity to learn. And, I just feel like it stroked a lot of things in my ego that made me feel better, like to be able to give to somebody else and help somebody else in their most vulnerable and sick times.
right.
To be able to feel like I might have been able to help them get through that, or if it's not the actual patient and, they're sick enough that they don't make it, God forbid, then maybe I can help the family members deal with that grieving process. Like it's
Right.
That does take a special person.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have trouble with, I think, in general, feelings and other people's feelings. I couldn't imagine taking
He's
that
cold,
on
people.
Yeah, taking that on for people, processing it and knowing what to give back.
And I think for me, I can't generalize, but for me, that was something I've always liked to do. I was always a person who liked to give and try to help. And, if a friend called me and needed something, I would do whatever I could to try to help them out. And, I'm blessed with a great group of people. And I feel like, with your show being called the GOAT, I was a little bit nervous at first, like, I don't feel like I'm not the greatest of all time. I'm me. But then listening to your first episode and you guys explaining that it's not about just, being the best at that profession, but more the best
That's
version
you can
of yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, oh, wow, that's a cool turn, like a cool spin on the word, like the GOAT. And I feel like me saying all this is me to then say I am thankful for everybody involved, because I feel like, you can be the GOAT and you can be as motivated as you want. And I'm sure there are people that are out there completely maybe doing it by themselves. I'm not sure. But for me, I know it was more of a team approach, as, going down to brothers and sisters, to sister-in-laws and brother-in-laws, to, parents that were all willing to help and step in for, the areas of my life that I needed help in, taking on, working full-time, going to school full-time, my wife working full-time, having the young children at home, like people in my life, friends, family, they were so willing to help, be supportive in this drive, and helped me reach, the goal where I'm,
You were
not
trying to
my
get
end
to.
goal yet, because I feel like there's always days to keep growing,
You're
but to
becoming
get me
the GOAT.
to where,
You're not the GOAT.
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. But to help me reach, new little achievable goals every single day. And I feel like that is the most important. What I get out of your guys' idea of the GOAT is just conquering those little goals every single day to become the best version of yourself.
Well, you couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, that's great
Couldn't say
advice.
it better.
And to have people around you, I mean, that's a necessity. You need that. I mean, you can't,
You can't get
nobody
done
can do it
without
on their
that
own.
helping hand.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's get a little bit into what you dealt with when you first became a nurse and what you were thrown into.
So it's crazy because, I took this time and worked hard and pushed myself through school and yada, yada, yada. But then I get out, I go to my first nursing interview. I'm blessed enough to get the job. I was nervous because I haven't had to interview for a job in almost 20 years. So I was like,
it had to be crazy.
And, there's
Palms are sweaty.
in school, they can give you all the different ideas and different skills and techniques to try to, master these interview processes. But I literally went on my first job interview as for a nurse as thinking, all right, this is going to be a practice run. We'll see what kind of questions they ask, what they're looking for. And I was blessed enough to actually be offered the job almost right out.
Right.
That's great.
So when I first started, I started off as a float nurse. And for people who don't know what that is, I work in a hospital, and I don't have a set unit that I work on. Like, I didn't have like a telemetry floor that I worked on, or a med surg floor, an intensive care unit. I literally just kind of filled in wherever
when someone wasn't.
If somebody wasn't there,
are you learning like a little bit of everything, but a whole lot of nothing right away? Like it's like you're taking little bits of information, but not specializing, or
kind of. And specializing's that's a good way to kind of explain it for sure. Like. And it honestly made it a little bit trickier in learning. And I remember talking to some experienced nurses saying, "Hey, like being afloat from the beginning is a little bit tricky, like because
that's
it's one thing, like things like that are strange, like not strange, but things that are like you don't think about, like. But when you're on your own unit, you know where your equipment is, you know where the things you need are. You
eventually start thinking about it,
building relationships. Exactly, you start building relationships with the other people you work with, and then okay, this person's really helpful, or I'm not going to ask this person for help because they don't seem to deal with that interaction well.
We all work with a couple of them.
So, but
hey, guy.
So being afloat just makes that a little bit trickier because you're never in the same place for 2 days in a row. Usually, there's even some days where you come in, you're scheduled, you're placed on one floor, and then by the end of the shift, you're on a completely another floor.
That's got to be stressful.
It is
absolutely. That's got to be terrible.
It sure made it tricky, but then I felt like, okay, I don't know. I felt like because my age, maybe a little bit, I felt mature enough and ready enough for that challenge. And I was like, okay, let's do this.
Nice. That is everything, right?
But halfway through my first orientation as a nurse, with the first employer I was with, COVID hit. And it kind of really, it's strange because I don't really know much about nursing before COVID, if that makes sense. So this has become my normal nursing routine.
So wait, hold on, where I know you're hearing about COVID at this point and it's on the news, but you're in the hospital. When were you like, oh my God, this is a thing? This isn't anybody hyping this up?
Okay, so it's funny you say that. So I remember I promised my children that when I graduated nursing school, I would take them to Disney. I said they were making just as much as a sacrifice as anybody with me being so busy with school and all that stuff. So I promised them that. Luckily, awesome. January, terrible with years, but I believe it was
20, probably.
2020. We went to Disney. It was wonderful. We came home. It was my favorite family vacation I've ever been a part of. It was just a great experience. And then, we come home. I think it was within a day, maybe 2 tops. The announcement of Kobe Bryant dying was announced, and then that
R.I.P.
All around that time, you were hearing about COVID and the Wuhan and all that stuff.
Right, all that
and,
was happening.
I was listening, obviously, because it was a medical thing, and it was, a part of my new profession.
Your field.
I knew at this point, I already interviewed for that first job, and my start date was, the very end of that January. So I was entering this community and about to, embark on this new journey.
Yeah.
And I started to hear wind of it. And then you heard the first winds of it being out on the West Coast.
And this is just you watching the news.
This is just,
Did you start? Were you nursing at this time?
I literally started, and COVID wasn't here yet. Okay. Well, as far as we know,
how long would you say you had of just normal nursing before?
I would say it was about 2 months, maybe
that
at best. Yeah, it was literally, like I said, and it wasn't even a full 2 months because February is a short month, and I started at the end of January, and by mid-March, it was in the hospital, and we had a patient with it, and
how did they treat that first patient?
Oh my goodness! Like it was crazy. I remember there was points of time like where the hospital was like, all right, well, we're not all going to wear masks yet because we don't want to scare the other, patients in the hospital and stuff. And then you started to see some more on the doctors' ends of it. Not even news, but I saw the doctors in the facility starting to mask up and wear more masks.
You're like, hold up.
And I was like, wait a minute. If they're walking around with masks, why are we not walking around with masks?
Why are we
Right. I felt a little bit vulnerable, but again, I'm a new nurse. I'm new to this crowd.
Yeah, it's just part of the process.
Everything's brand new to me. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Right. And then it was at the hospital, and it was like, oh my goodness. And I feel bad for everybody and, throughout the entire world that had to deal with this because, you don't know. And the only thing I can kind of think, like for me, like when the AIDS epidemic first hit, I'm sure they all felt the same way. They had no idea what was going on. Everything was so scary.
They didn't have a lot of information on it. Yeah.
Exactly. No information, no treatments. They didn't even know how it was being transmitted. Right. So it kind of, probably, it makes me think the nurses at that time probably went through a very similar situation to all the nurses that are working now. And I'm sure some of them are even still working and worked through both and maybe had a better chance or better way to deal with what's going on a little bit with this. But, so it came into the hospital. Of course, we were all nervous at that point.
Did they have like a big conference meeting?
So there was definitely a lot of town hall meetings.
This is crazy.
For sure. There was a lot of discussion on how we would try to manage it in the hospital, whether we would make specialized units for patients that were testing for COVID. But then the problem is early on, as everybody knows and it's well documented, the testing at the time, it was taking days, sometimes weeks before you would get results back.
Right.
So it wasn't like,
were you just going off of symptoms at that point? Or are you like, okay, they probably have it
pretty sure. And then for a long time in the hospital, we were calling them PUIs, patients under investigation. So they were like tested. We were waiting for results, but we had to treat them as if they had COVID, whether they had it or not, just for everybody's safety involved.
Right. So, Josh, that's different from a DUI.
Thank you for clearing out. I was like, you get those for that? I can't do nothing anymore.
Right. So then as testing got a little bit better and as we became more aware of some of the early symptoms, and I think that's one of the trickiest things about COVID right now is everybody presents different. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier about, it's one thing to read it in a textbook and they're going to tell you, you might lose your sense of smell or taste or you're going to have a fever.
Right.
It's not the same for everybody. It doesn't present the same in everyone. So that made it just a little bit.
So everybody's suspect.
At one point, it felt like everybody was
and
suspect.
What are you getting to protect yourself at this point?
Early on, it wasn't as, it didn't seem as dire as the word that I'm going to use because at one point it was just like, this is crazy. We had, it felt like we had the right amount of equipment, but then PPE, as it's called, it kind of got dwindled down.
That's that personal protection equipment?
Yeah.
Ooh, look at you, big guy. Go ahead, get him.
I got a fancy nursing degree.
Let them know.
So things like N95 masks were a big deal. Yeah. And, on the box, I remember in school learning about how to put them on and take them off properly and stuff and how long you should have them on for and that they were only good for 1 year.
Wait. How long do you have them on for?
So the N95s, when I was taught
am I wearing mine too long?
When I was taught with school, it was a one-time use mask. It's only supposed to be for a certain amount of time. It's not supposed to be worn all day the way that, a lot of people had to do when, PPE became a shortage. It wasn't available for everybody. So we were reusing masks. Like a mask that, is a one-time use for 10, 15 minutes, now became a mask that you wore for days upon days with the hospital's trying to do their best to clean them up and sterilize them, I guess, for you. But
that sounds like it sounds terrible, but it sounds like they had no choice.
It was back against the wall type thing.
I'm not here to point fingers or say anything like that at all. I'm just
absolutely. That's what happened.
It was just the reality of what we were faced with at the time. And, being a newer nurse, again, like I said, learning every day and trying to just go in with my best face, it was scary because it just felt so out of my control. It was definitely crazy. It felt like crazy times.
Have you caught COVID?
So, unfortunately, about midway through my orientations, now we're talking the end of March, early April, I probably have about 3-4 more weeks left of my hospital orientation before I actually get to go out and, work on my own. And honestly, as a nurse, you're never on your own. Hopefully you never feel like you're on your own. You can always ask your coworkers for help.
Always have the team.
For sure. It's definitely a team approach. If you don't have a team approach, you're going to have some really long, hard days. But I felt, what I was saying is I was about midway through that orientation process. I came home on a Monday or Tuesday. It was after a 3-day stretch of working for 3 days in a row, which anyone who knows about the 12-hour shifts knows it's 3 days. By the end of the third, you're no good. You're just tired and drained. So I just felt tired and drained. And then that night I started to get a little fever and chills. And I was like, I haven't had a fever in a very long time. That was at the time, that was one of the big symptoms that they were, going off of. So at that point, I notified my employer what was going on. I scheduled an appointment. I went in for a test. But again, it was early on, so the results didn't just take a few hours or a couple minutes. It took 9 business days before I found out officially that I had COVID.
And then you quarantined from your family at that point?
Yes, I did my best.
Did they shove that
Yeah,
Q-tip thing all the way up to your brain
so
and
you
get
had
your
the
next
swab
thought.
that tickled your brain for sure, and if it doesn't
Absolutely.
tickle your brain,
It's not effective.
It's not working.
I feel like I
At
didn't
the
know if
time,
that
I-
was the procedure when I had I had a little scare, I guess, and I felt like they shoved that thing in and got my next thought from a month. I'm like, what is this? This is crazy.
But the crazy part for me was that it was just so early on in my career, and here I am thinking and at the time I was so fearful because in the news it was, if you had any kind of heart condition, you were at a higher risk.
Right.
Diabetes was another one of the top
yeah,
comorbidities
right.
that they were, saying that the patients weren't doing well. So me being a type 1 diabetic and now waiting on these results as I felt a little bit worse every day for about 7 to 8 days was scary. And then around 7 to 8 days, I felt like that the COVID took its like that. It ran its course in my body, but then I stayed feeling that poor for another 5 days. So it was strange.
It was
and
so
I just
different.
remember waking up every day like, oh my God, is this just life now? Like this is just how I'm going to feel. Like I couldn't smell, I couldn't taste.
Nothing. Thank God we brought them in when we did.
For sure. But then again, like I was talking about earlier, how, different diseases and viruses and those sorts of things act different in everybody else's body.
Right.
My wife, who's also a healthcare worker, she notified
she's
her.
in the field also.
She is. She notified her employer.
She a nurse or?
No, she's a interventional radiology tech. But
Ooh, checking them bones.
so she notified her work, and then they went through their protocol where she was tested. And at first they were a little apprehensive because testing wasn't readily available yet. And
Right.
I mean,
But they got to get you back to work. They need healthcare workers.
for sure. So they were like, "Hey, are you having any of these symptoms?" And at that point, she wasn't having any of the symptoms. At that time, she wasn't having any symptoms. And then she really pushed, and she was an advocate for her coworkers and for the patients that she was helping take care of. And she said, "Look, my husband's positive. I really think I should be tested even without these symptoms because if I have it and I'm giving it to it's not great." Her employer agreed. They tested her, and she eventually did come back positive as well. And she never had one symptom. So you had
nothing at all.
You had a household where 2 people are known to be positive. One of them feeling pretty sick, and I was really run down and fatigued, and had pretty much every symptom of the time that they were that COVID was giving at that point. And
now did the kids get the disease?
so we never, at that point, they were saying that, children weren't really being affected, luckily.
Right.
And they never really seemed to get any of the symptoms.
Thank God.
And we never had
God.
we never felt pressure to feel like we needed to test them, luckily. And honestly, at that point, I don't know if there would have been tests for children anyway. Like, I don't,
Right,
it was
right.
so early on that, again, it was just
don't know.
everybody guessing and making their best, trying to make the best decisions with the knowledge that we had at the time.
Yeah, which wasn't much knowledge at
For
the
sure.
time. Yeah.
But it definitely made orientation harder.
Oh yeah.
Can only imagine.
Because again, I was halfway through, and then I was off for this period of time until then I was able to be off of quarantine and actually feeling better, and then I was able to go back to work. But it felt like I was starting orientation all over again.
Yeah. it's
Right.
gonna be tough.
All brand new.
So here's the big question: vaccinations.
Let's get it.
Now, from what you've seen in the hospital, what effects does the vaccination have for people? Like, what's the benefits?
So for me personally, I don't like to kind of preach and tell people, oh, you need to get vaccinated, or
No. From what you've seen,
from what I'm seeing in the hospitals now, and again, it's funny, I see memes and stuff on the internet, and it'll say
That's
something
where
like,
we all go for news anymore,
it's just
right?
a cold, you don't even have to worry about this. And for some people, luckily it is just a cold. But for whatever reason, and nobody has really been able to pinpoint why, it's not just a cold for some people.
Right.
And they really become critical and turn, and their health declines rapidly. And it's scary and it's sad. And I will say that since the vaccination has been out, I work in an intensive care unit now. I have since, earlier.
You see this coming in.
Yeah, since earlier on when I was talking about being a float nurse, I decided to switch. Critical care was something that I always had interest in, but again, I can get into some of the reasons why I was a little bit nervous about doing that in the beginning, but pushing myself to want to learn and keep going put me into the critical care atmosphere. But anyway, since I've been in that role, which has been for a little over a year now, I haven't really seen patients that are vaccinated in the intensive care unit needing
So
to
the
be placed on a
vaccination
ventilator.
is doing what it's supposed to.
And I know there's
Just from your experience.
just from my
Right.
experience. Again, I'm not running any kind of scientific study. I know there are studies out there that have all this information and people can interpret it however they want, which is crazy to think about. Like you're talking about scientific studies and facts,
Right.
and people can interpret it however they want. But that's just the world that we're in now. We have
It is so
these
different.
platforms on the internet
It is
that
so different.
you can preach anything, whether it's true or not, and get enough of a following that then all of a sudden something that might even be false could then become true. I don't know, but that's a whole different topic that I know we're trying to talk about right now.
You being the GOAT.
So you're saying if somebody is vaccinated, you're seeing them having a better shot of coming out of that hospital.
For sure. And honestly, I've since I've been working in the intensive care unit at the hospital that I'm at for the past year, I've only seen maybe 2 patients who were vaccinated with, where their outcomes
Like those
were
rare cases
eventually
that come in.
where their outcome was eventually them passing away. And both times I've seen it, and again, I don't want to speak for everybody, but the 2 times that I've seen it where they were vaccinated and that was the outcome still, unfortunately, there were reasons why. One of them had a rare autoimmune disorder where they told him pretty much
prior
up front,
histories, the stuff.
right, that the vaccination, they didn't think he would have like much of a response to it, and he took it just in case, and then unfortunately it did not work. And then another lady, she wasn't really out of the window where she would technically have immunity from the vaccinations, or not. I don't even want to say immunity. I don't even know what they're calling it now, but where she wouldn't reap the benefits of what the vaccination could have
Right.
done, hopefully for her, and she ended up becoming positive with COVID before that period, and it unfortunately
Oh,
took
man,
her life.
Being in the ICU unit, you actually you're with these patients during their last moments.
It's definitely tricky. And then throughout different times through COVID and with, the numbers at some point really raising, sometimes they're down a little bit, and, it kind of has been like a wave, almost like a roller coaster of emotions and just sheer numbers of people being positive
Right.
and having to be admitted into the hospital. But throughout different times, hospitals have had to shut down visitation rights. So now these patients are in the hospital by themselves.
Do you take that on? Do you
Yeah, I
feel
was
like,
gonna say-
wow, this is...
You really do. And there's been times where, you're holding an iPad for a FaceTime call so that the loved ones can, either say goodbye or at least see their family for a moment to try to
goodness.
make people comfortable. And, that part of the job, it's definitely
So
tricky.
you've held an iPad to somebody while they were in their last moments, seeing their family.
For
What
sure.
toll does that take on you?
There's some days where you come home with a very heavy heart and it's sad and you feel like, is there going to be a break from this? And in reality, it's not just COVID. I mean, I feel like COVID has amplified the numbers. I feel like being an intensive care nurse, you're going to see more of the...
Yeah, you get your fair share
Sometimes
of
their
it.
families can go in. I mean,
Right. But having that visitation right stripped and these patients feeling like they're on their own, and then they're in closed rooms because they have to be, you don't want the doors open so that they can just, be passing the virus around, airborne or whatever. It definitely is tough. And
So when you're holding the iPad, is the person are they awake? They know what's going on. Are they aware that it's their last moments?
so there's been pretty much every situation from them literally family members saying goodbye as we're, putting the patient to comfort care. There's been times where, you're just holding the iPad for someone who's just too weak to hold it, or putting it up on a pole for them to hold it so that they can just talk. And honestly, it's not just COVID patients for that anymore, because again, with no visitation, it's every patient in the hospital
Right.
that's there and feel
Oh,
vulnerable.
wow. I didn't even
And
think of that. Like you go in there for something, not as
And,
major, and then you still have to go
sometimes
through these
the joke
protocols.
in nursing is, as cold as it might sound, it's like, okay, well, we don't have to deal with that annoying patient's family member who are going to be pressing it all. But then in reality, there's things like, if you have a patient who's had a change in mental status, like they're not acting themselves, you don't know what their baseline is. And sometimes
So you're not
having a
talking to
family
family.
member at the bedside, or they can say, hey, no, this is definitely not my,
Not right.
my family
Yeah.
member's normal state. Like there's still something up. But with us not having there's definitely a lot of drawback to not having visitation for the patients, and even for us as healthcare workers. It's tricky. It's definitely weird waters to navigate.
To me, the whole, I mean, if you know that your death is coming, one of the benefits of that is getting to say goodbye. and that's kind of robbed from you. I mean, if you get hit by a car tomorrow, it's done. But when you know it's coming and your family's not there, that's got to be so tough for them patients.
It's definitely scary, and you're there with them, and unfortunately, it feels like a lot of the patients with COVID specifically, like when they are being intubated, or at that point where now it's time for that next thing to try to give them the chance to be able to pull through. There's not a lot of great success rate with people being intubated and pulling through. So it's a little bit, it's scary.
So when you hit that point, you're like, you don't have a lot of hope.
As a nurse, you're sitting there and you're with these patients and you know the outcomes that you have seen and how it's the days have been going. And now you're trying to put on that face to tell the patient, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to make you comfortable. You're going to be safe. We're going to do everything we can for you, which we are. But in the back of my mind, sometimes it's scary and it's sad to think that I know what the outcome most likely is going to be, and you do everything you possibly can as the nurse or as the healthcare.
Right? You stay positive, and that's all you can do.
And honestly, you have your patients that are able to come off and do recover and things, but it's the numbers are more heavily in favor that when you are that sick, especially with COVID, that it's really
not a good
tricky.
chance.
Yeah. Your chance, you're becoming the GOAT of yourself at that point to try to fight through, to pull through the other side. And like I said, that fight is a lot of the times really tricky.
Wow, man.
And are the families aware of that it's not really good news when it hits that point, or are they told like the percentages?
So some, as the nurse, we do talk to the family members and we're trying to give them the best information that we can. And, some people who, obviously the internet's out there so everybody can do their research themselves and see what's going on. So for me, it's, they know it. You can be as honest as you can with them. But my job at that point is to just try to give them as much hope as I possibly can, if that's the decision that they want to make for their family member, if that's like the plan of care for that specific patient. There's some patients that are like, hey, I've lived my life. I'm maybe a little older. I don't want all this done to me. Yeah. Just make me comfortable and, so I don't have to suffer. And that's a whole different mindset when you're going in, because then it's just like, okay, well, I'm just going to try to make this patient as comfortable as I possibly can, as well as make their family know that I'm doing that for them as well, so that they have that comfort that their patient or their family member is being cared for and taken care of.
Was there any one patient that really got you, that you went home that night and you couldn't sleep and you were like, that got to me?
Unfortunately, I wish I could just say it was one, but there's been a lot. It's really hard. I remember.
You think that's because of what you came into with COVID? It wouldn't be as bad, or
I would think. Yes, I think so. Especially talking to some of the more veteran nurses that I do work with, they said that they've seen more death the last 2 years with COVID than they have their entire 25 years as a nurse. So
wow, really?
It's a lot. It's heavy. So it can definitely be tricky. But for me, being newer.
That's all you kind of know?
Exactly. So I feel like at one point throughout all this going on, like maybe a half a year in or whatever, it was just like, I almost was like, hey, am I going to get another kind of patient besides just COVID? Like, am I going to get a congestive heart failure patient? Am I going to get a stroke patient? I mean, a lot of the patients that were in the hospital and were very sick with COVID, they had a lot of those comorbidities that we were trying to help at that moment, but COVID was really the main issue for them, exacerbating, making everything else that's worse, like making some of the other disease processes that they had worse.
For the listener, not me, I know what it means. Comorbidity?
Break it down. Comorbidity.
I can tell them, but
so,
I mean,
patients, comorbidities. It's just so I'm a type 1 diabetic. I can that's a comorbidity. Then some patients are type 1 diabetic with hypertension.
So Josh pouring another drink, that's a comorbidity. He's got a he's giving me a comorbidity.
Well, now you got it. This is how it spreads, folks.
Oh, goodness. So obviously, patients come in at different levels of health for themselves. And I feel like people who have poor health to begin with, this is just like that little the straw that breaks the camel's back for them, and it's terrible.
Right.
Oh, man.
And as a diabetic, you got to feel for them because you're
early on, and like I said, when I was told that I was positive for COVID early on, especially, I was scared. I was scared that I was going to make my wife sick, my children sick.
And that's the reason you got into this was for your children. And then imagine getting into that career and you could bring them home something.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the tricky part was then when it was time for me, I was better. I was cleared to go back to work, and then I was time. I talked earlier about the support system that we had, that I had with my wife and my other family members who've pitched in and, helped with, childcare and whatever it was that they could help me with and whatever I needed. And I was scared to even just have, say somebody like my mother who would help with childcare watch my children at that point, because it was, they were almost like little petri dishes. And in the beginning, we didn't have much information. We didn't know how long you should really be quarantining. And of course, there was the 2-week thing and all that stuff, but it was early on. So fear was definitely prevalent in all of that, and making it hard to then just, hey, all right, well, let me run back to work and have, a family member watch my children. Because at that point, then schools were being closed down. The world was shutting down. And, I had family members that were home and able to watch my children, but I didn't want them to do it because I was nervous about getting them sick, and and work didn't stop for my wife and I. If anything, it picked up, and we were coming home even a little bit more exhausted.
I'm getting the vibe that like once we're through COVID, you're going to be super nurse.
I've definitely had some more experienced nurses saying, "Hey." I remember when I was in school, one of my instructors said, "Look, you get through that first year of nursing,
right?
You'll pull through. It'll be tough. You're going to go home. You'll be exhausted. You'll be sad, yada, yada, yada. All the things that go along with the first year of nursing. But once you get through that first year, it'll become easier. You'll get a little more comfortable, a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more confident. No, not comorbidity. Okay. A little bit more confident in your nursing abilities and skills. And then my first year of nursing just happened to be at one of the craziest times healthcare has seen.
That's why we wanted to bring you in right there. How do you become a nurse? Right there, right before this pandemic,
I'm going to be honest,
knowing.
I feel at least blessed enough that my education, like the education I was able to receive through nursing school, wasn't interfered by this.
Okay.
Because now the new wave of nurses that are being hired, a lot of them don't have that clinical experience that we talked about earlier. A lot of their clinical experience was done virtually over the computer or with modules to try to work them through real life situations. Right. And puts them in a very tough spot because now they're coming in, and yes, we have a little bit better way of handling this pandemic, and there's some things that are set up, but they're coming in as a new nurse, bright-eyed, with no real clinical experience.
What advice would you give them? I mean, hopefully we'll have some nurse listeners.
Never be scared to ask questions. If you're not sure of what you're about to do, don't do it. Wait. Yeah. Go ask somebody else, somebody with more experience. They talk about mentors when I was in school, different mentors that you should try to latch on to throughout your career. Not even latch on, that's a bad word, but try to find a mentor that's someone that you can look up to. They don't even have to know that they're your mentor. Right. But a nurse that you are, a person that you feel comfortable that you can go to with your questions, and there's
no guesswork.
Right. And they're a great role model in, okay, this is how I handle this situation. Because, you go through school, and with anything, you learn how to do certain things, but until you're in that situation, and for me, the situations are a patient's coding and they don't have a heartbeat anymore, and you're like, oh my, there's no pulse. You're like, you could be taught what to do in that situation. Okay, you call the code blue, you start CPR, you start with the, life-saving medications. All that's well and good, and you can read that a million times in the book until you know the process perfectly. But until you're actually face-to-face with that person who doesn't have a pulse in front of you no more, you never know how you're going to really react.
Wow.
So
that's huge.
It's not having that clinical experience in school where, again, like I said earlier, you're never by yourself in the hospital, thankfully, or I hope you never feel like you're by yourself at the hospital or any of them situations. But, you don't... It's scary. And you don't know how you're going to react. And,
but just know you have your team.
To be able to find those mentors, and you go, hey, look at how this person handled this situation and how calm and collected she stayed. And she repeated certain things and said certain things and made sure everybody had their role in whatever situation it is. Right. Like very clear cut. So everyone knew what they had to do to have the best outcomes for the patient at that time.
So they should find that person and lean on them hard.
Yeah, for sure. Like, definitely, and it doesn't even have to be nurse to nurse. It could be a nurse to physician, nurse to nurse's aide. Like, again, we're all spokes in the wheel there. We're all there for hopefully the same reasons, and that's to provide the best care for the patients that we possibly can give at that time.
If you had to do it over, would you become a nurse? Would you pick something else? Knowing that COVID was hitting, knowing what you know now.
Maybe I would have chose a different time. Yeah. Like if I had full
before or after
full opportunity. Either which way, I feel like, you know, every day you're reading something new about COVID, whether it's how fast it's spreading, the different, like there's a million and one things, and every single day there's going to be something new about it. That's just, it's a newer disease or a newer virus, and it's just something that's, you know, it's going to happen. But for me, I don't know. I also feel like it's a part of my course, and it's just another driving factor to say, hey, you know, I'm going to stick this out. This is what I wanted to do. And now patients are really it seems like the patient population is a lot more vulnerable than maybe at other times. And that's why I became a nurse, to help people. Right. And I feel like I'm getting the opportunity to do
and whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
For sure.
Now, we wanted to ask you, we were going to ask all of our guests for a quote. You have a quote to leave with new nurses or new people trying a new career.
It's funny, and I feel like this is a great transition to kind of the question that you just asked. But my mom, she always used to say growing up, like, if you find a job or a career that you love, you'll never feel like it's a day of work for you. Yeah. So you're asking, you know, would I choose a different time or whatever? It's yes and then no. Like, no, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm one of the frontline workers. I'm glad I was able to, you know, push through the experience and learn as much as I did in these last couple of years. And, you know, obviously just try to stay positive, even though at some points that seems hard, but stay positive that they're going to figure this out, or time will, you know, the virus will mutate enough that it maybe isn't so deadly for some.
So, all right. And real quick, vaccines, you personally, yes, no?
So my wife and I decided that we would take the vaccines before work kind of mandated them, or the government tried to start mandating them and stuff. It was an option that we decided that we would take early on, even in that thought process. My wife took the Pfizer vaccine. I took the Moderna. That was very purposeful for us because we don't fully know what's going to happen, and we were nervous. So if one of us were going to have if we then later found out that Pfizer was doing, you know, people were having reactions to Pfizer or vice versa Moderna, at least it was just one of us at that point. So that, you know, because again, thinking as parents, you're thinking, oh, God forbid, you know, it's scary. You know, everything's so new.
One of you's got to
so
survive it.
Yeah. But also saying that, I chose a profession where every other vaccine that they have is a requirement to be employed. So I have to get my flu shot annually. I have to have, you know, Hep B vaccinations. I've had to, you know, so vaccinations in general didn't scare me. Obviously, the newness of this vaccination,
without all the studies,
I feel like was more of the
nerve-wracking
thing. But the kind of vaccination it's not like it's brand new science. These are vaccinations, like the way they make them, that way has been around for a while. So it's not like it's just, hey, it's a new vaccine, let's just take it and give it to everybody. It's a little bit more. A little bit more than that.
Okay, so no clear answer to it. It's a preference.
So, again, for me personally, it was a no-brainer. I was willing to take the vaccination.
Okay,
but from what I'm seeing personally in the hospital, I would recommend it to people because I've seen way less people vaccinated in the intensive care unit and dying from COVID than I've seen vaccinated people.
Well, that's enough for me. I'm vaccinated, and I'll continue to be vaccinated because
he's got the antidote.
I'm scared.
And it stings because I just feel like sometimes I wish science was a little bit more upfront in the sense that, hey, it is brand new. They're not going to know everything. So every day something new comes out, it's a whole new set of rules and a whole new set of, hey, this is what it is now. And then the people that are already skeptical or fearful of everything, they're going to be like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. And in reality, in a weird way, they do and they don't, because it is so new. So they can only give you the information that they have at the time, and I wish they just presented it a little bit different, that maybe people would be a little bit more accepting to some of the information. But again, with the internet and the way people work nowadays, I don't know.
And just real fast, just for the people, can you repeat your quote again?
So again, it was from my mom, and I don't know, she heard the quote from somewhere else, but she always just said to me that if you had, you know, if you picked a job or a career that you loved, you would never feel like you had a day of work. And
that's good advice, Mom. I don't know if you stole it. Feels like you did, but
I don't know. She's a clever lady. She's a very clever lady and full of wisdom. So maybe she stole it, but if not, she definitely made it sound like it was her own.
All right, folks. Now, hold on now. Hold on. It's that time. I'm sorry, folks, but this is, you know what time it is.
Oh, yeah.
All right, this is the part of the show where Rick's going to tell us what he found on the internet or in a headline about his goat of the week.
You make it sound so impersonal, like I found it on the internet. I know this guy.
Oh, my bad.
I didn't know he was your buddy.
I thought I was the goat of the week.
Oh, yeah.
You're a goat for sure.
It's you. This guy is filler.
But before we get into that, Chris, totally thank you so much for your service in the field, taking care of people and doing your thing, man.
And thank you
we
for
appreciate
the
you.
vodka.
Yes,
no
and
problem.
the vodka is delicious.
I really appreciate this. You guys starting this new adventure is awesome. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much.
This was definitely enjoyable, and whoever else they ask, if you have any hesitations, don't, because you'll get a little bit drunk and it's worth it.
Ooh, a little tipsy, folks.
Yeah.
That's the happy hour part.
You're going to hang in for my story, right? I put a lot of work into this. I want you to hear it.
I'm here, man.
All right, take us away, Rick.
All right. So this week, the goat of the week is Chuck Feeney.
Chuck
Have you ever heard of him,
Feeney?
Chris?
No, I never heard of this guy.
Feeney's a very familiar last name.
It does. I feel like there's a million Feenies, right?
Yeah. In fact, the priest that married my wife and I, his last name was Feeney. So
Oh, okay.
Ooh, good old Father Feeney.
Was it an Irish Catholic priest?
it sure was.
Yes, because Feeney is an Irish American.
He's a redhead.
Yeah.
He's a redhead, folks. You'll see on the
I don't know the
YouTube.
color of his hair, but yeah, you gonna put a picture up of him, Josh?
No, I'm talking about this guy here, the nurse.
Okay. Oh, he is a redhead. Yeah,
He is a redhead.
Red beard.
Ginger's a dying breed.
All right, guys. So Chuck Feeney is not your typical former millionaire, or multi-millionaire. He lost all of his money, lost it all in a spectacular way.
Right.
Like the reason I selected him as the goat of the week is not how he gained his money, but it's how he just lost it all.
Hold up.
Yeah,
wait,
it's a
wait.
great
He's
story.
the goat of
he's
the
the goat of the
week.
week
Time out.
for
I
a
feel
He
like
lived a life. He
For
lived a
losing
life.
the money?
I feel like then I can easily qualify as a go to week as like another guest next time if we're talking about blowing
I've
money.
lost some fortunes. Yes, I could
But
be a
anyway,
goat of
hold
the
on.
Okay, go ahead.
He's the goat of the week for losing the money?
week. Losing the money. Yes,
All right.
losing all the money.
Bring us into this,
Okay.
please. Get me into this.
All right. Well, Chuck Feeney, right out of high school. He's from Jersey, right over the
a
bridge from where
neighbor.
we're at. Yeah, but he was born during the Great Depression. And which is crazy, he lost all his money because usually them people that are born in that era,
Yeah,
they
right,
hold
or
on to
they're
the money.
savers, yeah.
Like we've all had that grandmom or great grandma.
It's in my mattress.
Yeah, it gives you exact change and wants every nickel back. Yeah,
You're getting pennies for Halloween wrapped in
exactly.
saran wrap.
And then when she passes, they found like $100,000 in her pillow. It's like, why were you giving me exact
We
change
made
for 10
it!
years?
Yeah, did you really walk to school barefoot?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. You had
But no, them
Chinos.
people definitely have a tougher skin and definitely do the savings for sure.
Well, he was born during that era. So then he right away he goes once he's of age, he goes to the Air Force.
Right.
Becomes a radio guy in the Air Force.
Wow, like we're like, hey, good morning,
No, not
Vietnam.
the radio. No, a radio operator.
Oh, okay.
It'd be more like coming in for a line.
Oh, okay. I thought he was Robin Williams waking up the platoon. But good.
So while he's there, he comes up with a good idea. So his idea is something that Chris actually touched base on. Where did you find that vodka?
On a cruise ship.
What
Ooh.
type? Duty free.
Duty free, yes, for sure.
No duty, folks.
He kind of came up with that idea. So he was in the Mediterranean in service, and he started noticing that the soldiers wanted something to drink, and they didn't want to pay a lot for it. So he
See a
found these
need, fill a
areas where
need.
it could be duty free. So he just started selling liquor duty free. Made a ton of money doing it. Made like kind of millions, but not millions, but a lot of money. He wasn't rich yet. He wasn't even wealthy.
But it was working.
He saw it working on a small scale, but he knew he didn't have the tools in his toolbox to do it. So he used the GI Bill.
Right.
You know what the GI Bill is?
GI Bill's the military gives you for schooling.
Yeah. Like for enrolling, I mean,
Right.
you sign some documents, they let you go to school, but he chose to go to Cornell. I don't know if they're still paying for Cornell. That's a thing.
Cornell.
Yeah, Cornell. That's a home of Andy from the
Andy
office.
Bernard.
Yeah,
Hey,
Andy Bernard.
there it is,
Shout out to
folks.
a shot for Andy Bernard. at
Shot for
Cornell.
Andy.
Yeah.
Rid-it-did-do.
But go ahead. So
So he enrolls in
The loans
Cornell,
for the
right?
schools.
And,
All
he's getting that education, a toolbox that he needs to take that to the next level. While he's there, he meets a roommate. Roommate loves his idea. They go in on it. They go all
Sounds
in.
genius.
They graduate and they go back into like the Asian continent and they start creating this.
okay.
But they don't just do alcohol. They're doing everything. Like, what
do you mean?
Like they'll
Toothpaste, hair
cars.
comb.
They're selling
Wait, what?
cars. Duty
Cars?
free. Yeah.
Wait, no.
They-
like
yeah.
I'm coming in to rent a car or buy a car.
Buy a car, tax free, duty free.
Buy a
shop
car.
from them.
And where? Asia.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, this is why it's successful. I want to find one of these.
Hey
shops that
Siri,
get a
buy me
tax-free car,
2
right?
plane tickets to Asia, please.
So they become extremely
Shit.
successful. They're in airports all over the world, galleries all over the world. They're bringing in $300 million annually at this point. Like they've
Wait,
made
repeat that?
$300 million annually.
One more time?
Annually.
Annually.
No,
300
the money pot. I don't care about that.
$300 million.
Jeez,
Right.
Louise.
So things are
The
going
whole
great.
time they're not paying taxes?
Well, they're paying the customers, and I don't
The
know
customer
how that works.
You don't know how the duty free actually works.
yeah.
But it's tax free for the consumer.
Just saying, I feel like I kind of can jump ahead and maybe guess on how he lost his fortune.
You might be right.
right.
Let's
Hold
get
on,
to it.
hold on.
Slow down.
Should we take guesses and then you tell us?
No, because if you guess right, it'll ruin my whole
No,
thing.
just
Get out of here. Let me tell the goddamn story.
Whoops. All right, my bad, folks. My
I don't know
bad,
if you know
folks.
this about your co-host, but if you want him to be quiet, pour him another glass.
Get yourself. Go ahead. Get yourself up.
What
Get
a
yourself
dick
up.
nurse. I don't want him as a nurse.
Yeah.
When I'm dying of liver failure.
Yeah, 3 cc's of vodka right away. Shut you right up. Okay. So it's
Back to it.
$300 million annually. They're doing great. All of a sudden, Chuck Feeney wants to sell the company. His partner's like, why? $300 million annually? It doesn't even make sense to sell right now. We're growing it. We're in the middle of growing it.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I have to sell it now. I want to sell it now. So his partner held it up in like litigation forever. And finally, right before the sale, a secret about Chuck came out. Something.
Ooh, mystery.
This is the beginning of the end because the sale is now being forced through litigation. Things came out to the public. The world knew about Chuck Feeney. His partner knew about Chuck Feeney. And it's a huge secret, something that kind of destroyed him. I wouldn't say destroyed him, but like left him with a little bit of money. But we'll get into that right after this shot.
Oh my goodness, man! I understand it's a podcast.
And I have the problem.
Anticipation.
And I have the
Jeez
problem.
Louise.
Salute, fellas. All right, bring us into it. Hey, this is the part of the show we're going to let you in on a little secret about my co-host, Rick Renson.
If you are looking for a relentless real estate agent from Century 21 Advantage Gold, give me a call at 215-806-6766. Again, that's 215-806-6766. You can also email me at rick.renson@c21ag.com.
Century 21!
And we're back.
Hey, now, all right, just give us a little recap.
Little recap. All right. Guy goes into the service, creates a little business in the service, selling duty-free alcohol, right?
Duty-free.
Creates some money, a little
Tax-free.
bit of money, and then uses the GI Bill. He goes and gets his education, comes back with a partner, starts making
Partner holding it
$300
up.
annual off the same idea. So, he's rich. He's set for life, right?
Right.
Decides he wants to sell. Partner don't want to sell, and now they go into litigation.
Okay.
So Chuck had to come clean about what was going on. So when they were going to sell, he actually didn't own any shares.
What?
He didn't own any shares of the company. He created.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, no. He created the Atlantic Philanthropies. I'm going to mess that word up. Yeah, the Atlantic.
Enunciation.
What was that word you used? That $10 word?
Oh my God, comorbidity, Jesus.
Yeah, the Atlantic Comorbidities.
Oh, yeah.
So he created the Atlantic Philanthropies and gave them all of his shares. They were earning his cut every year, and nobody knew about it. He wasn't taking a cut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's insane.
Then the sale got forced, and Atlantic wound up getting $1.6 billion from the sale. He didn't take a penny. $1.6 billion from the sale.
Say that. What?
1.6. You never heard these big numbers.
These big numbers are new for me, but are you kidding me?
$1.6 billion from the sale. Yeah, he didn't benefit anything. But he still had money. He had some money saved. So they wound up getting everything, but then he had to come clean. So he
Right.
wound up doing this article where he published and said, hey, this is my life goal. My life goal is, it has a mantra. It's giving while living. So he didn't want to wait for him to be dead to give away all of his money. His whole goal now is to give away everything he has before he dies. He wants to see it go out before he shuts his eyes.
So he
for
can
last
see the
time.
good it does.
Right,
Why
exactly.
he's here.
Wow, that's a special person.
Right, he influenced Bill Gates. Bill Gates references him constantly to
Everybody should.
right. So then through the the Atlantic Philanthropies,
Right.
he starts kind of funneling all of his money through, and his whole goal was
All of it?
Yeah, pretty much all of it. So before everybody knew that Chuck was doing this, they always thought he was cheap. They never knew he was giving it away.
Right.
So
Oh, okay.
he wore a $10 Casio watch. I mean, we're talking about everybody thought he was a billionaire.
Right.
$10 Casio watch.
I can get one of those.
Yeah, never owned a property, never owned a car. always flew coach because he felt like that dollar that he
took
could
it
have
away
went from somewhere else.
right.
So he lived this life of just like somebody who barely is making it, like keeping it afloat, giving away all of his money. So cut a little bit into the future. Chuck Feeney eventually does his goal. His whole goal is to give it away while he's alive, and that's why he created the Atlantic Philanthropies. They shut down in 2020. It's not bad news. They shut down because they completed the goal of giving away all his money.
Oh, wow.
That is intense.
Do you have any idea where those funds and stuff went?
I believe a lot of it
to rich kids.
No, I did.
To rich
Ivy
children.
League schools.
No, well,
I can't afford
some of
college
it. I
right
did
now.
read some of it went to Cornell. Some of it to go to Cornell,
Which makes sense.
It got spread around the world. His home country, Ireland, got a little bit of it, and
Chapping morning to you.
I believe he invested heavily in education for young people that normally wouldn't have it, fresh water, stuff like that.
Oh,
That is
awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah, but it got spread far. Like nobody got a really big chunk. He tried to help out as many little groups as he could.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude.
So when they shut down in 2020, he finally gave away all of his money, and then everybody was approaching him like, "Oh, you must be sad you're shutting down." He goes, "That's why I opened it. This was it. I did it. I won. I did what I wanted to do." Guess
What a
how
goal.
much he gave away in total in his lifetime?
I'm assuming it has to be bigger than 1.6 billion since you said that number earlier.
Hold on.
That's good
I'm
math
gonna,
on your part.
Look
I
at
have
you.
no-
I'm going 3 billion.
$3 billion?
I have
billion.
no idea. It's got to
take a
be.
number.
We're going to go $15 billion.
You're crazy. Who gives away that kind of
I don't
money?
know. Bill Gates, maybe? I don't know. How much?
He gave away $8 billion.
Oh my,
in his
$8
lifetime.
billion?
Over $8 billion in his
Yeah,
lifetime.
dude. Oh my God, $20 would have been enough. But geez,
yeah,
Louise.
right.
$8 billion, and
absolutely.
kept barely anything for himself. So right now, all of his the philanthropy is shut down.
Is he
And
still alive?
He's retired. He lives in an apartment in San Francisco and kept a little bit of money to himself just to
to be
retire,
able to live.
just to live.
Wow, that's
So it's-
amazing.
yeah.
Just to make bologna
Giving
sandwiches.
while living.
Wow.
Giving while living. And for that reason,
That's our go to the week.
Salute!
all right, what do we have?
Damn
left
fine
here?
stuff,
Yeah.
bro. Damn fine stuff.
All right, overall, we've been drinking this vodka for a while.
It's
we
really
still
good.
at our same scores.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
definitely, for sure.
Yeah, I'm starting
Agreed.
to feel it a little bit. Yeah,
thank
I'm on my second glass. It's
Get that little,
Feeling
warm,
that chest.
that little warm rush. Yeah, it's
yeah.
great.
Take a little hit of this soda. Yeah. All right. So, Chris, is there anything you would like to add? Anything you would like to, shout out while you're on here?
I appreciate you guys very much for considering me a goat. It's like I said,
definitely
100%.
go.
And we can't
100%.
thank you enough for
And
coming
thank you
out.
for everything you do
This was
in
ju-
that field you are in.
this is definitely a very
Thank you, brother.
enjoyable experience. So thank you. I
And it was
appreciate
great to hear. Y'all the best. Y'all the best.
For me,
around.
shout outs though. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about contributing and donating and stuff. If you want to go donate to,
absolutely.
the Diabetes Fund of America, that'd be cool because I feel like
we'll put a link
touch
up
a
to our
little bit.
website on that.
touch a little bit,
Absolutely.
something close to home for me. And, guys, just don't be fearful. Try to be respectful of each other and, do the best, not just for you, but for everyone around you. And I feel like if everyone had that motto,
Yeah.
life could be a little bit better. So
All right. That's
I
Very
appreciate
nice.
this. Thank you,
No,
guys.
no. We
No,
appreciate
thank you,
coming
brother.
in.
Thank you. And with that being said, we would just like to, thank you again for coming in and doing your thing and telling us a little bit about, your profession and everything you're going through in the pandemic and everything going on and being a new nurse and everything.
Yeah. We'd like to thank Century 21 Advantage Gold for allowing us to use their studios. and
We
backing
love
us.
you.
Yeah. Perfect. If you're looking to donate, what was that, Chris?
Just, the Diabetes Fund of America.
We'll put that up on the website. Speaking of the website, go to becomingthegoat.net. Again, that's becomingthegoat.net.
Net.
No dots in the goat, just becomingthegoat.net. And we'll put up Chris's links to where you can donate. That's also where you can find out how to listen and watch on our part. We are on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google Play now, or Google Podcast.
I think
and
that's it.
YouTube.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, YouTube. I didn't know I was being filmed.
Oh, you are being
Ooh,
filmed.
the
You shouldn't have
cameras
picked
are
that
on you,
booger.
my friend.
Shouldn't have picked that booger.
Oh,
I was
man.
going to
I'm
tell you,
caught-
but we were
I
on
was
air.
caught
He's not
red-handed.
sanitary. He's not sanitary.
All right, guys.
Good
we had
stuff.
a great time.
Thank
and
you so
let's
much,
cheers
brother.
this
No
out.
problem. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for this
Salute.
opportunity.
All right, see you later, folks. Enjoy.